Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO Mobility Mojo, Stephen Cluskey.
There was a pedestrian bridge built in Venice, Italy, a few years ago by one of the most famous architectural firms in the world. A stunning bridge which took years of development. But when it was first opened, it became obvious that there was a serious problem. Can anyone tell what's wrong with this photograph? So you might notice, you see the little steps all the way across? A fairly insignificant detail maybe, but this little detail had huge ramifications. People kept tripping on them. Younger people, older people, and especially those with poor eyesight kept falling. So to try to address this, the local government placed reflective strips along the bottom of each step. But the problems continued. Those with suitcases couldn't get across, and parents with strollers found it difficult. The local government were getting sued, the architectural firm getting sued, the building company getting sued. Everyone was suing everyone. The legal battles continued, and after more than a 5-year wait, they retrofitted this. Lovingly called the egg by locals, this pod was added to the side of the bridge at significant expense to enable those who needed it to get across. And it takes 20 minutes to get from one side to the other. The funny thing is, a business actually developed from this problem. So local children would wait at one side of the bridge and charge people a fee to carry their suitcases across. Now, I'm not telling you this story to scare you into thinking, God, are my facilities good enough? Rather, I'm using this story to highlight the fact that accessibility affects all of us. There are 1 billion people globally with accessibility needs. 1 billion people globally. Accessible tourism is the fastest growing, yet most underserved market in the tourism industry. But let's address a slightly more, closer to home for me anyway, segment of this market. I had an accident 16 years ago in Ireland after I fell from a hay bale and broke my neck. I was a carefree 18-year-old with hopes, dreams, and aspirations, with a world full of possibilities in front of me. And in an instant, it seemed like many of those doors had been slammed shut in front of my face. I remember one of the early days in the hospital when a nurse who was looking after me smuggled in a brochure for a treatment facility here in the US. I cannot tell you the rapture I felt just knowing that hope was available. In that moment, just being any part of this world mattered more to me than whether I lived or died. That little brochure packed all the inspiration I needed to both try to live and to be okay, even if things didn't work out. And it's been a catalyst for my life since. You see, information empowers. Since that accident, I've gone on to get an honours business degree. I've helped to change government legislation at the top level. I've helped to secure more than $5 million to reshape the accessible taxi landscape in Ireland. Noel Noel, our co-founder, and myself have become internationally certified accessibility experts. I've traveled the world, and all while paralyzed from the neck down. The reality is that this incredible world we live in, with an endless amount of possible adventures, was still available to me. I'd just been viewing things in the wrong way initially. I now realized I needed to plan much more vigilantly when traveling. But after entering this new world, I could see so much unnecessary friction in a deeply broken process, and a huge opportunity being missed by almost every hospitality provider in the world. See, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. But many people with accessibility needs still have this viewpoint, that the door is still closed to them. And I know that's not the case. Everyone has different levels of needs, and the world is made up of a complex pyramid of facilities which cater for everyone at some level. We just need to inform people properly. So, with my business hat on, let me give you an example of the impact that my custom had on a business. And bear in mind, a wheelchair user is only a small percentage of the much larger accessible tourism market. Earlier this year, I was planning a trip to Hamburg, Germany with some friends. Now, to give you some insight, as a wheelchair user, planning a trip can be filled with multiple booby traps and potential potholes, and these wheels don't handle potholes very well. So I started where I think most of us would start: your TripAdvisors, your Booking.coms, your Expedias, to try to get an understanding of the hotels in Germany. And great, it gave me that. Next, I needed to figure out the level of accessibility in those hotels and which would be most suitable for my needs. But this is where I began to struggle. Sure, I could sort of filter for accessible hotel, but what does that actually mean? What is accessible? There are so many different standards, different regulations, different viewpoints around the world that, from past bad experiences, just seeing that little wheelchair symbol didn't exactly fill me with confidence. So I phoned the hotel and I asked them, do you have a fully accessible bedroom? To which they said yes. So I said, great. Then I asked, do you have this, this, and this in the bedroom? And after going off to check, they came back with another yes. So I said, great, I'll book that. Now, on the face of it, that hotel got one booking because they had one accessible bedroom. There was a lot of friction in the process for both myself and the hotel having to find out that information, but that's just the way things are at the moment. I had looked at a number of other hotels who maybe had the facilities I needed, but they had little to no information on their website about that, so I didn't bother. The reality was that because that hotel had that one accessible bedroom, not only did they get my business, but they got the business of 22 other people who were traveling in the group with me. Often when we think about that one accessible bedroom, we think about it in isolation, and that's just scratching the surface. I told you about the 1 billion people earlier. Well, now I'm going to talk to you about the business potential for this market. So what is accessibility worth? Well, we can look at this through a few different lenses. For example, the disability lens. 40 million people in the US with a disability, 4.7 million disabled veterans. Or the temporary injury lens. Almost 1 million hip and knee replacement surgeries here every year. 25,000 vehicle collisions in New York since January. Or the big picture lens. By 2020, 25% of the total tourism market will be made up of those with higher access needs. 25% of the total tourism market. And that's mainly due to an aging population, 100 million seniors in Europe. In the US, baby boomers are turning 65 at a rate of 10,000 a day for the next 18 years. There's a silver tsunami coming. And someone with accessibility needs stays longer, 3.3 nights compared to 2.9, and spends more, $256 compared to $233. But not only that, people with accessibility needs generally travel with family, friends, or wider groups. And more often than not, that one individual with accessibility needs is the determining factor for where the whole group goes, where a wedding takes place, or where a conference for more than 1,000 people happens. Skift had to consider a high level of accessibility for the event here today due to the makeup of the different needs of all the guests. We work with some of the most famous hotel groups in the world, and what we've found up to now is hotels have viewed their accessibility as a compliance thing or a regulatory thing, rather than viewing it for what it is, an asset, one of the most underutilized assets a hotel has. You should be earning a return on your investment in accessibility, the same way you do with Wi-Fi or with the swimming pool or a gym. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars on this, and yet rarely mention it. I remember accessibility affects all of us. Take Brian. He stresses when planning a trip with his family, including his elderly mother who can't walk very far. He just wants to know whether there's 2 or 20 steps up to the front of the hotel, or whether there's an elevator or alternative access. Or Kate, who's just had a baby and needs to understand whether she'll have to fold her stroller to get into the coffee shop. Little things make a big difference. A remote control. Do you know how many hotels keep the remote control either on top of the TV or the opposite side of the room from the bed? Now imagine that's your elderly mother or father with a bad hip or a bad knee who have to struggle out of bed for that trivial task. That's accessibility. I see many of you wearing eyeglasses here today. Ever forgotten your eyeglasses when out at a restaurant? You know, many restaurants offer a menu in larger print. That's accessibility. Accessibility affects all of us. Those 2 simple things cost practically nothing to implement and yet make a big difference on customer experience. So much of this comes down to loving our customers, to placing a value on that customer experience. But, and it's a big but, studies show that more than 50% of people with accessibility needs choose not to travel because of a lack of information or fear of something going wrong. That's more than 500 million people globally. For most people with accessibility needs, the scariest thing about traveling isn't the organizing, it's the uncertainty, the black hole of not knowing what to expect. It's a key distinction. In the US, accessible bedrooms are the second most searched amenity after Wi-Fi at 52%, yet have the least amount of information. Can you imagine how many untaken trips, how many unseen cities, how many lost friendships and love, and how many missed business opportunities? because we fail to fully inform. The good news is we can do something about this. We can change things. How we travel is indeed something we can affect. By making the system sensitive to this information, like the width of a door or the height of a bed. There's no need for any hotel to be in any way afraid of this. It's also okay to not have the most perfect facilities. We get that. But let people know everyone has different levels of needs, and by providing information on what you do have, you provide confidence, you provide reassurance, you provide life experiences. Imagine the ripples of this notion on the millions of people living with accessibility needs across the world. And that's why it's so exciting to have been invited to speak here at Skift today, as each of you are the influencers and the decision makers. The primary message I have is that all of you represent enormous potential and enormous possibility for change, because we know that a fully informed world not only impacts on more than 1 billion people globally, but it also creates a much better customer experience for your guests while increasing your bottom line. So whether it's Mobility Mojo or any other expert provider you can find to help you with this, I'm not here to talk to you about that. All we're asking is that you join in. Parts of me died early on in that accident. And I think that's something we can all say in one way or another with any life-changing event. I got to redesign my life around that fact. And I can tell you it's been a liberation to realize you can always find a shock of beauty or meaning in what life you have left. Like that brochure, lasting for a perfect moment, all the while giving hope. See, information empowers. I believe that when we look back at the end of our lives, the only real measure we can use to judge how well we've done is by 3 things. Have I laughed enough? Have I loved enough? And have I made a difference? The hospitality industry embodies these 3 qualities. People travel for laughs. They travel for love. They travel for life. See, deep down, everyone is open to this world. We just want to make sure that the world is open to everyone. Thank you.